Imagine standing in front of a mirror. Looking into your own eyes, you try to understand who's making decisions for you. The mind that whispers logic, or the ego that demands recognition. Most people believe they're governed by reason. That choice is a conscious process. But the truth is, more often than not, you act not because you want to, but because you don't want to lose. Everything you call rationality is often just a clever excuse for fear. The ego is the advocate for your weaknesses. It hides them behind beautiful words. The mind wants the truth. The ego wants victory, and every internal conflict is a battle between them. First insight, the illusion of control. When you tell yourself, I choose this, you're often simply protecting your ego. For example, you reject someone first, not because you don't feel it, but because you're afraid of rejection. The ego always wants the last word, even if that word is a lie. The ego creates the theater. It forces you to play roles, confident, cold, independent. But this isn't strength, it's armor. And armor doesn't make you invincible, it makes you frozen. Second insight, rationalizing pain. When you're betrayed, the mind searches for meaning. The ego looks for someone to blame. The mind wants to understand why it happened. The ego wants to prove you were right. That's why you get stuck in past situations. Not because you're bored, but because your ego can't stand losing. Your ego can't stand uncertainty. It's afraid to admit that life is beyond its control. The mind can live with questions. The ego demands an answer. Any answer, even a false one. Third insight, attachment to an image. You're not defending yourself, you're defending the version you believe in. Image, status, confidence, they're all masks. When someone destroys your mask, you feel pain, as if you were dying. But it's not you who is dying, it's the illusion that dies. True strength doesn't lie in being right. It lies in allowing yourself not to know, not to win, not to prove. Fourth insight, the silence of the mind. When the ego speaks, it shouts. When the mind speaks, it whispers. But we're so accustomed to noise that we confuse loudness with truth. If you learn to listen to silence, you'll hear what your inner voice fears. You are not the center of the world, and that is liberation. Think, how many of your actions are born not from desire, but from the fear of being nothing? How many decisions are simply a reaction to pain, rather than a path to self-realization? The ego is a prison built of shoulds. The mind is a window through which you can escape if you dare to look honestly. Do you notice how often your confidence breaks under pressure? This doesn't mean you're weak. This means your confidence wasn't created by your mind, but by your ego, a fragile system of external validation. But when you begin to see the difference, when you sense that behind anger lies fear, behind pride, pain, behind control, insecurity, for the first time, you stop being controlled. The mind doesn't demand to be understood, the ego demands to be admired. And that's why, when you stop seeking approval, it becomes quieter inside. Your thinking clears. You begin to see the motives of others, not because you want to judge, but because for the first time you see without filters. This is awakening. When you stop fighting for image and begin to live for meaning, the mind and the ego are not enemies. They are tools. But if you don't distinguish between them, one becomes your master, the other your prisoner. So who controls your decisions? The answer is simple, the one you listen to in silence. Sometimes you have to lose everything to hear that voice. Sometimes you have to lose to understand who you are without victories. But if you reach that point, more than just intelligence will awaken within you. Awareness will awaken within you. It doesn't seek power. And here's the truth. The ego wants to control. The mind wants to understand. And awareness simply observes. When you begin to observe, you stop being a slave to your reactions. You become free. And then you understand, neither the mind nor the ego controls you. You are the one who can choose who to listen to. Not logic, not pride, but the inner witness. And as soon as you realize this, the world ceases to be a game. Everything becomes simple. Not easy, but simple, because only the moment the ego falls silent, does the mind finally speak the truth. This truth is quiet, like the breath after a storm. Without pathos, without demands, without masks. You simply know. Not because someone told you. Not because you read it in a psychology book, but because you feel calm inside. This is the true criterion of maturity, not the amount of knowledge, but the depth of inner silence. When you no longer need to be understood. Because the ego lives by attention. And the mind lives by meaning. When you stop seeking attention, you begin to understand meaning. The fifth insight, the separation of the self and the observer. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. When you realize this, all emotional games lose their power. Insults, opinions, comparisons, all become just noise. The mind analyzes, the ego reacts. But the observer, they simply see. And it is in this vision that freedom is born. Freedom is not in being strong, but in not being dependent on the need to prove strength. And then you begin to feel other people differently. You see their egos, their fears, their inner storms. And you don't judge. Because you recognize yourself in each of them. You stop playing. You stop fighting. You stop proving your worth. Because you simply are. And in this simplicity lies the highest form of strength. When you don't need applause, aren't afraid of silence, and don't run from yourself. When you simply live, realizing that the mind and ego are not enemies, but tools for your awakening.